Chapter 2, Christmas. Christmas Day, it had become the tradition at the Old Rectory, started when Freddie burst into the dining kitchen. It was not a long-established tradition. This was only their third Christmas there. But it felt right. At least, it had felt right last Christmas. This Christmas he was late. I'm afraid young Freddie's tardiness may be my doing, Ambrose said. I gave him a present which may have flummoxed, confounded, and confused him. What was it? A comb? Lydia suggested, rather unkindly. Or an egg cup, Sophie said. So many possibilities. Catherine was indignant. I thought gifts were for after breakfast, Ambrose. Christmas gifts are to be exchanged after Christmas breakfast, Ambrose clarified. This was merely a gift between learned gentlemen, a keepsake for all the arduous times we spent calibrating my scientific instruments. Ah, in honour of all the cakes and biscuits you ate in your study, you mean? Catherine interpreted. Ambrose inclined his head. So what was it? Lydia prompted. You are having such fun guessing, Ambrose noted. Let us while away the morning by continuing to guess until he arrives. I am thinking it is something to do with pirates, said Nana Inkwood. What with you being such a picaroon, Ambrose? Hee hee hee. Actually, you are the closest so far, Kalisha, Ambrose smiled. Aye? Something like a sextant, if I can use that word in front of the children. By this point, Nana Inkwood had already imbibed several rum and coconut waters. It's Crimbley Day, Freddie announced as he charged through the kitchen door. It is now, Lydia grinned. What kept you, Freddie? Oh, said Freddie. Am I the last? Technically not, Ambrose said. Xander is just behind you. Oh no, Freddie contradicted as he plonked himself down onto a chair at the table. Xander came to get me. I was trying to work out that thing you gave me, the mandolin thingy. A mandolin? Lydia and Sophie chorused. Play us a tune, young man, Nana Inkwood suggested. Actually, it was a folding or wire mandala, Ambrose corrected. Seeing the blank faces around the room, he asked Freddie, Do you have it to hand, dear boy? No, I left it on... Oh, wait, here it is. Freddie drew something shiny from his pocket. It was a set of interlinked silver wire circles and arcs, with small coloured beads here and there. It was the size of a drinks coaster. Please demonstrate, sir, Ambrose said. Freddie squeezed one part of the flat set of rings, and suddenly it became a silver filigree ball. With a push of his fingertip, it became a tube, then something in the shape of a small vase. It's like I never know what I'm going to get, what shape it's going to be, but I can always do this. He squeezed again, and it became the flat collection of rings once more. You could have just given him a piece of paper with PTO on each side, Lydia remarked. Can we have breakfast now? After breakfast, they moved into the living room, in deference to another tradition. There they exchanged presents. Ambrose had, coincidentally, got a comb for Freddie, as well as a brush for Lydia and a silken sleep hood for Sophie. Lydia pretended to be disappointed at these presents. She could feel the magic in them, but did not want to say anything in front of Sophie's Nana. Freddie could never show disappointment in any present. It was a present. But Sophie, Lydia could see, was underwhelmed. Lydia flashed a glance at her uncle. Understanding passed between them. Lydia nudged Sophie and whispered to her. It's magical. Wear it overnight, and your hair will be however you want it in the morning. Handy, eh? What about your brush? Sophie whispered back. Lydia smiled. Pretty much the same. It also dries my hair instantly when it's wet. And Freddie's comb? That's different, Lydia whispered. If he uses it to comb his hair, The entire universe flickers out of existence. Sophie glanced at Freddie's permanently tousled blonde mane. We're safe, she grinned. The doorbell chimed to deck the halls. Ambrose rose to his feet and stalked to the living room door. That will be the delightful Minerva, he announced. The students had best stand to attention and await inspection. He returned after a short pause, opening the door for Minerva McGonagall to enter ahead of him. Merry Christmas, one and all, she greeted them. The gathered masses responded with their Christmas greetings and seasonal felicitations. Are you joining us for dinner, Minerva? Catherine asked, after McGonagall had taken a seat. I am afraid it will have to be a flying visit, my dear, the professor replied. I have promised to have dinner with my niece, Deboranda, and her husband, Newton. The dear girl is something of a pariah in the family, the black sheep, so to speak. I'm the only one who keeps in touch with her socially. Why is she a black sheep, Minerva? Sophie's mum, Selina, asked. It's all terribly scandalous, she confided, though only to the family. She left home to join the Muggle world. The ministry confiscated her wand as a consequence. She worked as an entertainer, shortened her name, and eventually married a stage magician. I know him as Newton, but he's quite famous under his stage name, Deboranda tells me. Of course, the family reported her to the ministry. Ministry officials insisted on regular inspections to ensure that she was not using real magic to enhance her husband's stage act. She was not, I am proud to say. She's a lovely wee girl. Her husband, of course, still has not the faintest inkling that she is a real witch. I have always had a great deal of respect for Deboranda. That surprises some, given she has always been something of a rebel. But she is intelligent, determined, and always chose to stand up for herself. It has not been easy for her making a career in the Muggle parody of magic. She has become a celebrity in her own right, and her husband is, quite rightly, immensely proud of her, as well as suitably terrified. So you see, as the only one who still keeps in touch, I feel I must accept their dinner invitation. Our Argentine tango demonstration, Ambrose, will have to wait until next Christmas. The youngsters will be desolate, Minerva, Ambrose tutted. But Kalisha has taught me the butterfly and the skip-to-maloo. Hee hee hee, Nana Inkwood responded. Hey, take away yourself and bring that bad man forward. Sophie hid her face in her hands. Selina shook her head. McGonagall sipped her tea. I'm sure that will be a delight to behold, the professor observed. After McGonagall left them, Draco and Astoria visited for a while. They had brought Scorpius with them, and he ran around hugging people. Scorpius and Freddy played with the mandala. The grown-ups, meaning everyone but Scorpius and Freddy, chatted. They tried not to eat the mince pies which Fenton offered them, but Fenton had recently perfected a sad, hurt look which none could resist, and appetites were spoiled. Harry and Ginny came in the late afternoon. They had not brought their children, reasoning that people would be sleepy after Christmas dinner. Nana Inkwood was asleep. The students begged Ginny not to wake her, in case there was an outbreak of dancing. That night, after Selina had told her Christmas ghost story, and they were on their way to their rooms, Freddy turned to Lydia. He held out the mandala Ambrose had given him. Lids, is this thingy magical? He asked her. She took it and turned it over in her hands. She played with it for a moment, then passed it to Sophie, who had turned to look. Not in the way you mean, Freddy. I would feel it if Ambrose had put anything into it, Lydia said. But I've seen you play with it, and I can see it spark your imagination. It's not magical on its own, but the two of you together have your own special magic. So it is, then, Freddy insisted. It's very pretty, Sophie conceded. Lydia smiled. You're magical, Freddie. So you and the mandala are magical. Sometimes two things together are more magical than either of them on their own. Or three things, Freddie grinned, like us. Lydia hugged him. Then they grabbed Sophie and pulled her into the hug. Kingsley Shacklebolt visited the Old Rectory on Boxing Day, in amongst the huge sandwiches of Christmas leftovers. He, of course, diplomatically spoke to everyone present, especially Nana Inkwood, from whom he found it difficult to escape. After the small talk, Kingsley and Ambrose left the gathering for some time. Ambrose was alone when he returned, and passed on the minister's apologies for having to leave without saying goodbye. Nana Inkwood looked disappointed. She asked if Ambrose had a phone number for Kingsley. Ambrose apologized that he did not. After Boxing Day, the students took an intense couple of days to complete their schoolwork. Draco was glad of the chance to spend more time at home, but insisted that they call on him if they needed any help. The girls needed no help, and Freddie got all the help he needed from the girls. Training resumed and continued until the day before the return to Hogwarts. They broke only for the morning of New Year's Day. Lydia paid more attention to her friends and came to appreciate and predict their thoughts. They spent 2 days on a remote island in some warmer part of the world. This was remote enough for Lydia to practice some of her powers to their full extent. As they basked in the sunshine of the first afternoon, she experienced a welcome feeling of inner peace after exercising her deepest, most disruptive magic yet. At the end of their second day, after putting the island back in its previous state, she sat alone for a while, watching the sunset. She called the island's birds to her and apologized to them. She let her mind share the mind of a seabird and soared over the island. Lydia, as a bird, wheeled on the currents of air rising from the sun-baked hills. She could see other islands in the distance, over the horizon from where her physical presence sat near the beach. Returning to her body, she could feel for a moment the entire island. She could sense it, from its roots in the rock deep below the sea, up to the tops of the trees and onwards into the sun-warmed air, mingling with the cool sea breeze. She thanked the island and released her hold on it. Then she took Draco and her friends back to the Old Rectory. Lydia, there will come a time when I can no longer assist and advise you. Ambrose regarded her from under his eyebrows. It was the night before they returned to Hogwarts. Lydia turned her gaze from the study fire and scowled back at him. You can't or you won't. He sighed, replacing his glass of port beside her cocoa mug on the small round table. I simply cannot. I do not know why, or rather, I do not know how it is achieved. In some manner the Alter-Worlders can prevent me from passing on certain information to the chosen heroes who are to oppose them. As our two worlds come more into alignment, they are better able to limit our conversations. I have had to tread a fine line between passing on knowledge and not freaking you out, so to speak. But you haven't told me anything about what's going to happen once I somehow get into this ante-world, she protested. Ambrose looked down, refusing to meet her eyes. We have spoken of many things in general terms. Hopefully some of the wisdom I have managed to pass on. Wisdom? She interrupted. It is surprising what passes for wisdom these days, he smiled. Remember, information is being able to recite the colours of the rainbow. Knowledge is understanding why it is those colours. Wisdom is not walking off a cliff because you are ogling at the rainbow. The real wisdom in your case is in recognizing which of the words I have said were relevant. In your case, you may need some assistance in that from your friends. After a pause, he continued. In any event, I do not know the specifics of what you will face. Whilst there are some recurring themes, the specifics vary each time. They like to make it a personalised experience, much in the manner of our old friend Aloria Rackerson. Oh, goody, said Lydia with flat irony. Playing on our fears, you mean? The trick, Ambrose smiled, is to fear nothing, or rather not to fear anything. If you fear nothing, they will send a great deal of nothing to get you. Lydia flew to her feet in anger. Is this just a joke to you? You can't bloody die, so our deaths will just be a big laugh. Ambrose rose to his feet and stood over Lydia, his eyes glaring wide. His eyebrows knotted and bristled, and the muscles in his jaw clenched. She had never seen him angry before, not with this fury, and not directed at her. The moment passed. He drew a long breath and took to his seat again. The fury drained away from his face. I assure you, my beloved child, that this is no joke. Not to me. This is what binds me to the interminable agony of existence. And your deaths... He turned his head. Your deaths would indicate the failure of our world against theirs. Humanity would be over. Living with the knowledge I had failed every person alive, and every person who would ever have been after them, would be punishment enough. Yet I suspect the Alterworlders would find other tortures for me. Torture for the rest of my indeterminate lifespan is not, I assure you, any form of joke, jape, or jest. Lydia's voice trembled with emotion as she murmured, Sorry, Ambrose. I felt scared and angry. You didn't deserve that. I'm so sorry. I am sorry too, Ambrose smiled. I should never have been affronted by your reaction. I know only too well how it must be for you. And you have become more important to me than I should care to admit. You and your friends, you are very young, and time is growing short. His mood darkened as he continued. Lydia, you must be the leader of this team. I think that precludes you inviting any adults to become your companions. Even the most well-meaning adults will, I am afraid, have difficulty taking orders from a 14-year-old. Consequently, I fear you will be the youngest team ever to face the things you will have to face. The tears and the fears in Ambrose's old eyes were obvious to Lydia. She had never seen him look so vulnerable. I think I prefer it when you're being annoying, she said, with a weak attempt at a smile. Ambrose gave a rare though shaky grin. Then, my dear, you are in luck, for you are stuck with me. Lydia sat for a moment, looking into his face. For all his deception and manipulation over the years she had known him, he did care for her, she realized. She wanted her father. She had Ambrose. He would have to do for now. After all this was over, she would use everything she had learned, every power she had, to find her father. If she survived, and if she was good enough, and if he wanted her. She shivered and changed the path of her thoughts. Uncle, if you don't mind me calling you that, it's become a habit. I do not mind in the slightest, he smiled. It is certainly preferable to some of the things you might consider calling me. Uncle, the companions I need to choose, they might want to know how soon our little task will begin. What should I tell them? Ambrose steepled his fingers together and touched the tips of his index fingers to his lips. He looked deep into her eyes. I cannot supply you with a date for that. You are not quite ready, my dear child. You will need to train together with these companions, assign roles, build trust, form a team. But soon, all too soon, I fear, you will prove your strength to yourself and no longer be a child. And your companions will inspire your confidence, as you will theirs. And then? She asked. And then you will decide to look into the Watcher's eyes and challenge him.